It's time for us to look at what was a record defeat at home for Sheffield United. Never before they lost by 8-0 at Bramall Lane against Newcastle United. Steve Wraith is NUFC Matters. But Johnny Gascoigne, the Shoreham View, is the man I want to come to first. Johnny, even before the game got underway today, and I know the club is such a great club, and I know that it was with heavy hearts that a lot of Sheffield United fans, and certainly everyone involved with the club today, went to pay tribute to young Maddie Cusack, who not only played for Sheffield United, of course, she also worked at the club and was very much the heart and soul. And I thought that the eulogy and the silence, and also the celebration of her young life, which was tragically, we found out this last few days that she died at the age of 27. So, but it was an important moment, and I wanted to give you the opportunity, Steve, just to say one or two things.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I want to say to the Newcastle fans, thank you so much for respecting the silence, for joining in with the applause on 8 minutes. Credit to you, absolutely brilliant from you, so thank you for that. It was heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. Maddie played such an important point of getting the Blades women's team to a higher level. Every time you looked on Twitter when the women's game was on, it usually was "Go by Maddie Cusack" or "What a performance from Maddie." She just meant a lot to everybody. There was a company called Pitch Sports. She worked there. She did some things during the World Cup with Brian Dean and Lee Bullen from the other side of the city. Always came across very knowledgeable, very insightful, just a brilliant mind for football, which also got her a job in the marketing department. It's just a loss for us all. There are lots of tears today, whether you'd met her or not, but you could just see how much of a genuine football fan she was and how much she meant to everybody. And it's not just a loss for Sheffield United, it's a loss for the game. It's a loss for everybody in general. And our thoughts as a club, as a fan base, and everybody from my end, we just want to say so sorry to her family and send our condolences, because she was just genuinely a bright light in this world.
Well said, Johnny. Thank you very much indeed for that. Steve Wraith joins us now as well. Steve, if we move on to the football itself now as well, I'll come back to you, Johnny, in a moment. But for Newcastle United, this is turning into some 10 days, isn't it?
It is, and I just want to reiterate what Newcastle fans have done on social media and did at the ground today, and just pay our respects to Maddie Cusack's family. It's a tragedy. It's a tragic set of circumstances which has seen a young life taken. And from my perspective, I don't speak on behalf of Newcastle fans, as you know on this show. I always give my own opinion, but I think on this particular occasion, I do speak on behalf of all Newcastle fans. We send our love and our condolences to the family and to everybody at Sheffield United, because it's quite clear how much cement, and that's all I want to say on that. But as for the football, 10 days of excitement, Mark, because last week we were looking ahead to the Champions League, but there was that question mark hanging over Newcastle United's bounce back ability. There's a word we haven't heard for a long time. Could Newcastle play 3 games in a week? Could Newcastle go to Europe, go through the travelling of Milan to Newcastle and recover and play another game? Well, the answer was there for everybody to see today. Yes, they can. Newcastle took it to a different level. Sheffield United played their part today. They hassled, they harassed, They tried to have a go at Newcastle in those opening exchanges. And for me personally, the game did change on what again will probably be shown as a controversial incident, because we've talked about it on this show many times, Mark. Handballs. Had that been a defender who handballed that, Newcastle would have been shouting for a penalty. But it was Anthony Gordon who handballed and then got the look of the bounce, squared it back to Longstaff, who scored the opening goal. That seemed to shatter Sheffield United. The heads went down after that, and it's by the rules of the game, that goal was perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It wasn't deemed to have gained an unfair advantage and controlled the ball with his hand. But from that moment on, Newcastle just went through the gears. And Record breakers today. We didn't get the all-time record for a Premier League win, but we got another record, which of course is 8 different scorers in a Premier League game. We recorded as well our biggest away win in our club's history. So for me, yes, I'm smiling. I'm happy about it. I'm delighted, and it's how we go now for the rest of the season. We couldn't keep a clean sheet. We haven't kept a clean sheet since February, but now, Mark, we've got 3 in a week. So yeah, it's a happy time to be a Newcastle fan, mate.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and well said as well, Steve, on all of that. Johnny, I mean, Steve put, that first handball, and there's been 1 or 2 other incidents. We'll be talking to Keith Hackett later on about all of this. The problem that we've got here is that nobody trusts anything anymore, whether it's the referee and the assistants or VAR and who's sitting in there. And one of the other problems, it wasn't in your game, but there was a couple of other challenges where people were looking for yellow or possibly red cards today. There is this sense that some of the players have kidded so much and cried wolf so much now that things just aren't being sorted properly. And I think the Premier League's in a bit of a mess over all of this.
Yeah, 100%. Going back to Steve's first point about the handball, I haven't watched it back on the television yet, so I can't comment too much whether it was legal. It looked like he kept the ball in with his hand, which throws up another kind of argument. But if it comes back on TV that we're an accidental handball, fair play. And he's right. That first goal did do us in. The third goal, which wasn't a free kick in my book, there was no coming back. And it's fair play to Newcastle because as bad as we were, they still had to put the chances away, and they put 8 away. So you can't argue with the result. We were just abysmal. Going back to referees, and again, fair play to Newcastle. Their players weren't trying to referee the game like we saw against Spurs, where you had James Maddison basically blowing the whistle for him. And I think that is a problem in the Premier League. It's been mentioned before where certain clubs get players where the referees talk to them on a first name basis. And then other clubs, it's all second name and you do this, you do that. And the Premier League does need to get some consistency going. Because without you can accept a bad decision if it's consistent for both teams. Yeah. But too many times, and that's not the instance today. I think the referee may have got a few things wrong in heat at the moment, but then that's up to VAR to fix it. Yeah, that's the thing. That's VAR just seems so ineffectual. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. For those of us following sides lower down the leagues, we don't have VAR, so we still get the joy at the same time as we get the despair. But with what happened as well for you today, after you mentioned there the last game, I mean, Howard Webb came to see your manager and the players today. I mean, that's not good enough, is it, after these sort of events? Because that doesn't help anybody. And after an 8-0 drubbing again today, I mean, Paul Heckingbottom, it was bad enough for him last week. I mean, this week it's absolutely terrible. And Ray Houghton, who is very supportive and always has been, already saying on this show, the problem with this sort of result, the first thing that comes to mind is whether the manager's going to be staying even at this stage of the season or not. You'd like to think that he's got enough goodwill to make this one bad result. You'd like to think that. You never know in football, especially when there's Premier League money and Premier League results on the line. It brings a whole new factor of being unsure about things. But I'd like to think that he can maybe see out at least the foreseeable. Another 8-0 loss, and I might change my tune. Personally, I'm just hoping it's a one-off. I don't know. It's a lot to throw around for a club that's expected to struggle this season, that maybe one bad result could define a season. Because you've got to remember that until there were 12 minutes at a time, we were 1-0 up against Spurs. Yeah. We threw away a point against Manchester City in the deaths of the game. Yeah. So for one bad result, it doesn't mean that the whole season's a write-off. And I think the media have a tendency, especially the broadsheets, that's an old word, especially the newspapers, to kind of say, oh, well, he's lost 8-0 now, he's got to go. I think we need to look more long-term than that. Yeah, I agree with you, but this is the problem, and the fact is that we know this sort of thing, that there'll be those that'll be saying it's time for Chris to come back, or it's time for others to happen, and all this sort of... No, but this is the sort of thing they go, and then they'll all write different bits and pieces and what have you, and put their own spin on it. Whereas Sheffield United, for me, and Paul Heckingbottom need to get back to training, need to, put that one right out of behind you. I mean, Southampton did it, actually, didn't they? I mean, they've had their problems and woes now, but they've done it. Others have done it in the past. And, these things do happen.
every now and again. So, but I hope there isn't a knee-jerk at Bramall Lane, because I felt the club, having gone through so many years of when you went down and everything, and then that great resurgence as you came back, we're 5 games in.
Yeah, that's the thing. 5 games in, there's still teams below us.
Yeah.
Maybe not now on goal difference, thinking about it. I hadn't looked actually. But I still think there's teams in the Premier League, as daft as it sounds after today's result, that are worse than us. And I'm not doom and gloom just yet. And I've got to try and keep that optimism as a fan. And it's hard after games like today. But I still think we've got it in us to maybe shock a lot of teams. Just need to write today off and not listen to this bigger noise coming from outside. We need to look in house, get behind each other and keep moving forward, because that's how clubs like us do it, and that's how clubs like us stay up. We need to not bow to the pressure of the outside world, if that makes sense. Yeah. And just pointing out as well, only reason we lost 8-0 today is we didn't want to be the only Sheffield club to concede 8 against Newcastle, if you've got long memories.
Good point made as well. Steve, Gordon, what a play. I thought he was a great signing. I think Eddie Howe has used him well, and today, well, he looked a different class at times.
He did, yeah. He had a great summer, as we know, playing for the England youngsters, and he's carried that on into the start of the season. Squad rotation found himself on the bench today, but a rather innocuous injury to Harvey Barnes led to him coming on just after 10 minutes. And I felt sorry for Barnes, but Gordon took his chance with both hands, and rightly so for me, the man of the match. I've got to pick out though Sean Longstaff, and that may have a few fans of other clubs raising their eyebrows, but that guy in the last 3 games has been the glue that's finally put our midfield back together. We, since the Villa game, haven't really been performing as well as we hoped in the midfield. Turns out Tonali hadn't trained for 4 weeks. Joe Linton was carrying an injury. So Longstaff coming back in after being injured himself at the start of the season seems to have changed our fortunes, and he does it by running and endurance and getting back and tackling. He did another 10 kilometres today after playing 90 minutes in the San Siro, just looking at the stats. And that is fantastic. That it just shows what he's prepared to do in each game. And he goes about his job. He's not a spoiler. He's got a very good brain, and he's also very technical. And he manages to score the odd goal, an important goal that he scored today. So for me, Longstaff, was also a standout. And Sven Botman, again, just looking at the stats from today's game, 90 passes in the game, Saggers, but only 2 went astray, 88 found the man. Botman is quickly becoming probably one of the shrewdest buys in Newcastle United's history, and he's still only very young. But it was a team performance that the day, and I think the 2 things that will stand out for me are that even at 6-7 and then 8-0, Newcastle were not being selfish. They were looking for the man, and that really stands out with 8 different goal scorers, and they were still trying to keep that clean sheet, which ultimately they got, because they didn't want to let the back 4 down, they didn't want to let the goalkeeper down, they wanted to play till the end, and that's what you want to see from your team. You want to see commitment, you want to see effort. Sheffield United shouldn't be too downhearted, and I've got to agree with Steve that I watched the games against Manchester City and against Tottenham. They were really unlucky against Tottenham, but if they keep to the same kind of work rate and ethos as they've shown in those games, I think there's probably 3 teams worse than Sheffield United. I just get the feeling that the whole Wilder news story this week, whether it's a rumour, whether it's got any foundation, who knows? I think that's probably unsettled people a little bit. Maybe he's at the club, and I feel sorry for Heckingbottom. He's one of football's nice guys, and let's hope he gets another opportunity next week to put things right. Yeah,
they get an opportunity, don't you, Johnny? You're not in you haven't got a game this week in the Cup, have you?
No, we're out of that, thank God.
So you're out, they can worry. As for Newcastle United, finally, one of the best performances, I was actually talking to Alan Pardew, who's over on Talk Sport in the evenings, where he had basically put a youth side out against Manchester City. I don't remember, up at Newcastle, and they played him off the park.
Yeah, I remember that game. Yeah. Two games that stand out. That game where he basically put out that youth team and they pulled out a remarkable performance. There was also another one which got criticised heavily when Rafa Benitez was manager, and he parked the bus literally. We never got out of our own half. But again, I think we came away with a point in that game, and everybody was criticising, Rafa Benitez in Newcastle. And I think Bournemouth did it the following week, and they were praised for their performance. But look, Manchester City in the Carabao Cup, it's a big test. Of course, it's going to be a big test, but it's another big week for Newcastle. I'd love to think we could get through. We've got unfinished business. We lost the final last year, of course. But if you're gonna win it, Mark, you've got to beat the best.
Exactly that as well. Johnny, just finally, you've got to go to the London Stadium next weekend.
Yeah, it's not a nice ground to go to either. The atmosphere is never great. I don't think it's a football ground.
No, I'm with you.
It's always spicy, Sheffield United v West Ham, for previous reasons we won't delve into. Yeah. So I'm hoping that it's like the last time we went there when there was fans, where kind of went in thinking, well, West Ham's looking like a good team, and we ended up nicking a result. So who knows? We can do the same again. It's not a write-off. West Ham are hardly a team that's going to be spending billions and millions and millions and climbing up that table. So these are the teams who've got to look at maybe getting a draw out away from home to build on what we've got. I'm not too downhearted yet. Give it a week maybe.
It's been a delight, Johnny, to talk to you, and you, Steve, as well. Good luck on Wednesday for you. That will be an incredible few days for Newcastle United as well. What about the North London derby? What about it? We'll talk about it next.